welcome to Study with Sudhir, your digital classroom. We are looking at Chief Seattle's speech, which is part of the ICSE Class 9 and Class 10 English syllabus, English literature syllabus from Treasure Trove. In part 1, we have discussed the main themes of this speech. We've also gone through almost half of this particular text, discussed the difference in the concept of God between red Indians and that of the white men. I hope it's all very clear to you. I want you to ensure that you look at part 1 first before coming to part 2, and you need to look at both parts to get a comprehensive understanding. It's a slightly complicated because you may not be able to relate to the manner in which the circumstances in which Chief Seattle delivered this speech in 1854. That's very important to understand, but otherwise once you understand that, you will fall in love with the kind of concept, the kind of oratory that Chief Seattle actually indulged in 1854. So let's get on with the second part of the text. Your dead cease to love you and the land of their nativity as soon as they pass the portals of the tomb and wander away beyond the stars. They're soon forgotten and never return. It also conveys, he's very proud of the kind of religion that they follow as opposed to the one of Christianity that the white men follow. So it's almost he's talking from a slightly superiority kind of a complex kind of a situation, that he feels genuinely proud of how they actually practice their religion. So he says, your dead cease to love you, because once they are in the tomb, it's dead and gone, as they say, right? It's dead and gone. Whereas our spirits continue to hover over our land, protecting us, okay, guiding us. Our dead never forget this beautiful world that gave them being. They still loved its verdant valleys, its murmuring rivers, its magnificent mountains, sequestered vales, and verdant-lined lakes and bays, and ever yearn in tender, fond affection over their lonely-hearted living, and often return from the happy hunting ground to visit, guide, console, and comfort them. This is what was referred to in the beginning of part 1 of a video analysis. I referred to the fact that the translation over the years seems to be using a bit of flowery language. In this particular paragraph, that's really true, because look at the kind of language that he has used, and you wonder, would Chief Seattle have used this kind of very flowery language? We don't know. But anyway, we'll go with this translation that is provided to us. So he is again talking about the connect with the environment, with nature. Day and night cannot dwell together. The red man has ever fled the approach of the white man as the morning mist flees before the morning sun. So he says the red tribes and the white men cannot really coexist. There cannot be a peaceful coexistence despite the hand of friendship that the white men from Washington are actually now extending to the red Indians. However, your proposition seems fair. So despite that, he's making a full argument, and then he says, however, your proposition seems fair, because also he's kind of aware and conscious of his present martial prowess. And I think that my people will accept it and will retire to the reservation you offer them. Then we will dwell apart in peace, for the words of the great white chief seem to be the words of nature speaking to my people out of dense darkness. Just to kind of give you a kind of a comparison so that it's kind of clear. Whenever big dam projects are constructed, irrigation projects are constructed, multi-purpose projects are constructed, what happens is that a large number of people who live downstream, from where the water stream will now flow, have to be displaced. They have to be asked to move elsewhere, because now the dam, they are coming in between the dam area, right? This is something akin to that, and in return they are kind of provided for. Now look at them vis-a-vis the red Indians and the government of a particular state or the government of India. The government is a powerful entity, right? Similarly, Washington. These are the red Indians who cannot afford to fight. They are few in number. Government is large. It cannot afford to fight. But in its benevolence, the government will say, okay, we are going to move you out of here because we need this land. We will give you another space to go and live in. Same thing is referring to them. And will retire to the reservation you offer them. Right? So, and they will give them what is now called, in technical parlance, is called relief and rehabilitation. It's referred to in typical Sarkari language, it's referred to as R&R. Okay, the R&R package, it's what it's called. So under Supreme Court guidelines now, you have to give a decent R&R package whenever these kind of development projects, etc. take place. So he says that since we cannot fight, we will kind of accept whatever benefits you are giving us and we'll move away. This position is similar. That's what I said right at the beginning of part 1. This kind of an equation takes place all over the world, which is why this is so relevant to the times we live in. It matters little. It matters little when where we pass the remnant of our days. Where these people go elsewhere and live, locate somewhere else, it does not matter. There will not be many because already the numbers have shrunk from what it used to be at one point in time. The Indian's night promises to be dark. Not a single star of hope hovers above his horizon. There is a sense of pessimism. You understand? There is a sense of lack of hope about the future of the tribes, because he also realizes that over a period of time the tribe may vanish forever. Just like if you go to the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and just go through the history of the islands, you will realize that there are certain islands now, especially in the Nicobar Islands, which are now protected completely because there are very few in numbers and they wouldn't want those numbers to shrink further, right? But over a period of time, there are many tribes which have actually vanished because they come into the towns and cities, they intermarry. So their original gene pool actually shrinks because the kind of the purity of that gene pool gets contaminated as a result. It's no longer that particular tribe in 100% purity. So he says, not a single star of hope hovers above his horizon. Sad voiced winds moan in the distance. Grim fate seems to be on the red man's trail. Look at the language. Very interesting language. Grim fate seems to be on the red man's trail. So the red man is walking and it is being followed very, very closely by grim fate. Grim fate conveys that something, a sense of foreboding, a sense of something negative that is going to happen. And wherever he will hear the approaching footsteps of his fell destroyer and prepares stolidly to meet his doom, as does the wounded doe that hears the approaching footsteps of the hunter. So he's referring to himself, his tribe, his men, his population, his people as the injured doe. Doe as in the deer. And the approaching footsteps of the hunter. So the hunter has shot. The hunter has shot. It's injured and it cannot get up and escape and run away. It has to meet its fate because the hunter will soon reach very close to the injured doe. You understand? So look at the kind of metaphors that he's using for the future of the Red Indian tribes. Okay? A few more moons, a few more winters, and not one of the descendants of the mighty host that once moved over this broad land or lived in happy homes, protected by the Great Spirit, will remain to mourn over the graves of a people once more powerful and hopeful than yours. But why should I mourn at the untimely fate of my people? Then he's questioning again a lot of rhetoric. Why should I mourn? Why should I mourn? Tribe follows tribe and nation follows nation like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature and regret is useless. So from that mood of pessimism, Seattle is trying to uplift himself and the people all over again. He's trying to exhort them. Why should we be despondent? Why should we feel negative and pessimistic? Regret is useless. It is the order of nature and regret is useless. Your time of decay may be distant. He's telling the whites, your time of decay may be distant, that you may live for many, many more generations and centuries. But it will surely come, for even the white man whose God walked and talked with him as friend to friend cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may be brothers after all, we will see. So there's a hint of very gentle sarcasm that he makes, that there will come a time, despite your God who is talking to you almost like a friend, there will come a time when you will also be faced with a fate similar to us. And at that time, he says, well, you never know. We may well be brothers. Earlier, he has said, there is little in common between us. Our God is different. But then, in terms of what may finally befall the whites, you never know. We may just be similar. Interesting. We'll ponder your proposition. We'll ponder your proposition, and when we decide, we will let you know. But should we accept it? I here and now make this condition that we will not be denied the privilege without molestation of visiting at any time the tombs of our ancestors, friends, and children. Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. So he says that we should be allowed the privilege of visiting the tombs of our ancestors, friends, and children. So that we stay connected. That is something which should be granted to us, even though you are taking over our land. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. Even the rocks, which seem to be dumb and dead as they swelter in the sun along the side and shore, thrill with memories of stirring events connected with lives of my people, and the very dust upon which you now stand responds more lovingly to their footsteps than yours, because it is rich with the blood of our ancestors, and our bare feet are conscious of the sympathetic touch. So, basically, he's trying to say that he accepts the proposal. We will ponder over your proposition. Ponder means we'll think about it, we'll debate it, we'll discuss it. But he puts forth this condition that they should be free to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any given point in time. What does this convey about how he looks at his ancestors? He basically says that the ashes of their ancestors are sacred, and their resting place is a hallowed ground. We've already seen the reference in the earlier part. In part 1 we discussed, and they love to live in a land where their ancestors' memories are very, very alive and fresh, whereas the whites have to founder grave for their ancestors' grave, right? So that is the distinction that he has already made in this particular speech. We come to the final part of this particular speech. Our departed braves, fond mothers, glad, happy-hearted maidens, and even the little children who lived here and rejoiced here for a brief season will love these somber solitudes, and at eventide they greet shadowy returning spirits. So he says that my people will actually love this kind of an interaction with their ancestors and be able to greet them as well. The returning spirits is the phrase used. And when the last red man shall have perished. So it's already looking at a time when there will be no more red men living on this planet. And when the last red man may have perished, and the memory of my tribe shall have become a myth. Myth is something which may or may not have existed. Okay. Among the white men. So for the white men, this may just become some kind of a story which may or may not have been true. These shores will swarm with the invisible dead of my tribe. My dead people will not be visible, but they will be a reality. Okay. And when your children's children think themselves alone in the field, because you will be occupying this land and your children's children will be there on these fields, the store, the shop, the highway, or in the silence of the pathless woods. Pathless woods, again, very flowery language. They will not be alone. He says because the Red Indians, spirits of the Red Indians will still be around this land. So your children's children will not be alone, even though physically they may feel very alone at that point in time. At night, when the streets of your cities and villages are silent and you think them deserted, they will throng with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. So the spirits will still come back and hover over their beautiful land. The white man will never be alone. So he says it will never be. So he says that even though you may physically be owning this land, but the spirits will always be there around the same land. So you will not be alone. You will always have the company of the returning spirits of the Red Indians who are no longer alive. Let him be just and deal kindly with my people, for the dead are not powerless. Dead? Did I say? There is no death, only a change of worlds. So the ending is very beautiful. He says there is no death, because in his concept, in the way they pursue their religion, they follow their religion, There is nothing like death. They are only changing their worlds. They are changing their world from the present earth to go to another world. But even while they go to another world, they still live around what was at one point in time their land. So he says that he would expect the white men in Washington, the powerful men, the great men in Washington, to be considerate, to be fair in their approach towards the Red Indians and deal kindly with the Red Indians. That is the plea, that is the request which has been made in this speech by the Chief Seattle. Okay, so that is there. We'll just go through a quick themes of this particular speech a little more, just so that it's all very, very clear. Now, as I explained, he says that the ashes of the ancestors are obviously very sacred, so he would want them to be allowed to visit their resting ground. Then the other thing, the other contrast, specific point that he makes about is that he says that death is just a change of worlds and the spirits of the natives will still be there after their death to take revenge in case if they are treated badly. Okay, so he basically says that, he would want, he's, while he's saying all the right things, he's saying that, they will not be alone. They'll always be there. So in that, there is a hidden sense that, don't kind of rule them out. Don't think that you're owning this land 100% completely, because they are still very much around. So that is the kind of belief that he has, which he is kind of articulating in this particular speech. Let's just go through some of the themes which I discussed in part 1, basically talking about the Red Indians' attachment to the land. That has, I hope that is pretty much clear out here, that Chief Seattle believes that the dead are not really dead, as their spirits usually hover about their land, which they consider to be very, very sacred. Then the other theme is about the white men's supremacy that I mentioned about, because they are seen as being cruel to nature, not respecting nature as much as the Red Indians do, and they are kind of very more confident about their own military prowess and military strength. Then, of course, the difference in the worldviews of the white men and the Red Indians, that while he's actually making a polite proposal, but it's also basically, it's like a iron fist inside a velvet glove. It's almost like an order, because with the few people at their disposal, the Red Indians cannot really challenge the supremacy and the might of the whites and the government in Washington. So basically what you need to understand is that while the white man considered land to be a natural resource with which they can, do farming and basically reap benefits out of that, the Red Indians considered that land to be sacred and holy. That's one major contrast. Then Red Indians also believed that the earth did not belong to man. Man belongs to earth. Whereas the whites had this basically a slightly colonial kind of a tendency to rule the earth. So that's another contrast in the worldview of the Red Indians and the white men. Then the focus on the environment, that they are looking at kind of making use of the natural resources on land for their own benefit at this point in time. Whereas the Red Indians spoke about ecological sustainability, that you need to kind of protect it for future generations as well. So that is another and a very critical, crucial difference in the worldview between the Red Indians and the white men. Then finally, of course, is the fact that the Red Indians also come across as a rather emotional kind of a tribe, an emotional kind of a race, because they value their ancestors. They believe in the fact that the ancestors still hover around them, whereas the whites come across as, very practical minded. They think about what is to be needed. They kind of have a more practical attitude towards life in general. So the ecological sustainability, that the care for the environment, we have already spoken about. The religion part also we have spoken about. So basically the whites have their notions of progress, scientific and technological developments, creating more wealth, taking advantage of the resources around them. The Red Indians have a very different worldview, but they do realize that in terms of the fact that they do not have many members now, they cannot really challenge them in a very serious manner. So that is as far as the explanation, line by line explanation, analysis of the Chief Seattle speech is concerned. I hope this is very, very clear to you. You should not really have any problems. But as I said, if you understand the themes, quote from the text to a large extent, underline the keywords that are there, which I've also highlighted while discussing it, you should be quite comfortable with the Chief Seattle speech. I would reckon that this could be one of the questions which could actually come in 2020. High chance of it actually coming. It did not come 2019, but a pretty decent chance either for class 9 or for class 10. It's a sure shot. So I would urge all of you to actually prepare this pretty well. Thank you very much for watching.